Welcome to Midlife Matters. I'm Marie, and each week I'm joined by my friends Julie and Mindy to talk about all the topics keeping women in the middle years up at night. Today we're talking about the rules to having and forming great relationships. In fact, experts say having good relationships is the number one most important component of happiness. Join us as we discuss what we can all do to experience deeper and more meaningful connections with the people in our lives. Listeners, today we're discussing Chapter 9 in our monthly book series, Happy School by Julie Gordon. And if you're new to this series, you do not need to be reading the book to follow along. We're doing one episode a month, and today we're up to Chapter 9, which discusses the premier importance of relationships. And each chapter in this book is leading us to the subtitle of the book, which is Where Women Learn the Secrets to Overcome Discouragement and Worry. So again, no worries if you're just joining in, because we're making sure that each episode and chapter can stand alone. So this chapter, Julie and Mindy, I said is called The Premier Importance of Relationships. And that word premier carries quite a lot of weight. Do you guys agree?
Yes. I mean, well, she's going to talk about how important relationships are to our happiness, since this is Happy School. And so, yeah, it behooves us to pay attention.
Yeah. I hardly ever even used the word premier in my life.
No.
What did you think when you read that, Mindy?
I know. I was like, premier. Okay. I, like, mwah.
Yeah, it's like the utmost importance.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd probably say utmost.
Yeah. We are going to be talking about relationships, and the rules to having and forming great relationships, she says, are the same as they've always been. There are no new tricks or methods, nothing new under the sun. Julie Gordon writes that certain behaviors produce respectful and caring relationships, and certain behaviors repel meaningful relationships. In fact, having good relationships is the number one most important component of happiness. Some experts say as much as 70% of your happiness is determined by the quality of your relationships. Does this number surprise you?
Wow, there's a lot of pressure there.
There is, but it doesn't surprise me because I feel like, I don't know, maybe it's only my own mother, but I feel like parents in general, and I try to say this to my kids, like, it doesn't matter what you own. It doesn't matter, what you're wearing. It doesn't matter. Like a lot of the surface things that culture is concerned about, really relationships are much more important than those. And you can see people that seem to have it all, like anything that they want, all the entertainment they want, all the money they want, all the this, all of that. But if their relationships are poor, like within their family or amongst friends, or, they don't have a good marriage or whatever, there's a sadness to them, I feel.
Right. And that number, even if it's maybe slightly elevated, maybe it's not that high, it's still, that's a huge significance. Like, it is important. And I think I kind of took a reassurance, like, okay, so there are a lot of things changing in midlife, but some things haven't changed. Like she said, the rules haven't changed. And in some ways that's reassuring, as everything else is changing, that we can know how to have good relationships. It's not like mysteriously out of reach. Like, we can take responsibility and work on them. We have some responsibility in it, but not meaning that it's easy, of course.
Right. That's something I appreciated about this chapter is relationships can feel like it's an evasive topic, but it was actually a very practical chapter.
Yeah.
And I love that she has certain steps and she explains them really well. One of the quotes that I underlined just quickly was, she says, humans can live in a great setting, do work they love, be beautiful, be brilliant, and have lots of money and free time, but they can still be miserable if they don't have great relationships. And it's not that I necessarily feel like I've achieved all those other things, but at the same time, I know that in my own life, if I don't feel that I have a good handle on, my husband, my children, my family, friends, like that, nothing keeps me up more at night than relationships.
True. Yeah. It's usually in the quiet of our mind. Like if we're just going to have thoughts, we go to some relationship. We don't usually go to what kind of car we drive, or, you know what I'm saying? Like relationships are on our mind. Sometimes Mindy is just mad about that minivan, but
But even when those other things fail us, that we go to relationships, I think.
Yes.
So
relationships are so important, but I do think that we have to be lifelong learners. We never get to the point where we're experts at relationships, and we never get to the point where every relationship in our life is kind of going well, or there couldn't be something that we could do to make it better.
Mm-hmm.
So this chapter had a lot of great principles. One of the other things that she said was that if you look at what you are currently reaping in your relationships, it will tell you what you've previously sowed. And how does this make you feel?
Like, oh, ouch. You
Yes.
mean it's not everybody else's fault? And I'm partly joking, but
Right.
I think it is natural to put the responsibility off on other people, and just when things aren't going like you hoped, that
it's not your fault.
Yeah.
It's these people that God put in your life to have relationships with.
Yeah. All these hard
goodness.
people.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that definitely is an ouch statement. And I think sometimes we think, oh, well, this relationship is going great, so we pat ourselves on the back. But inevitably, there's some relationship in your life that isn't going great. And there we kind of have to say, ooh, what's my part in it, maybe?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think true to form with all of the previous chapters that we've read, like, yes, there are certain things that you do to have meaningful relationships and certain behaviors that repel, but what you have to be careful to not necessarily think of it like a formula, because I love formulas, because relationships take two people still. So I think what Julie's saying is you want to have at least given it your best. You want to be the best you can be in that relationship, and not, we can't control the outcome.
That's
Right.
true.
Necessarily.
Yeah. Right. Well, let's get down to the basics. Let's get down to what her 7 principles are for having great relationships. And we're going to share what she said, and then we're going to discuss them. So the very first, number 1, cannot have a relationship without this principle that she shares is you must be a person others can trust. And she really, really, in no uncertain terms, said that you basically can't have a relationship without this.
Yeah. I love how she said nobody's smart enough to break this rule and get by with it forever. And, we don't like rules, but this one operates kind of like the rule of gravity. You just can't defy it and have good relationships.
It says that eventually those without integrity in a relationship will be found out and others will pull away emotionally. Therefore, be trustworthy to the highest degree. And I've always wondered if I am abnormal in my desire to be able to trust someone or not. It seems like trust comes easily to some people more than others. But I would say that this is my number 1 thing in a relationship. If I don't trust that person, I find it really hard. And I'm always on the lookout for why I shouldn't trust somebody new that I meet, or I'm very aware of our situations and people trustworthy.
Right. And sincerity, genuineness can fall into that category. I know that that's something that's important, especially with you, Marie, with the podcast. You're like, let's be honest about where we are with whatever we're talking about. At the same time, that doesn't mean you necessarily need to divulge all of your deep, dirty, dark secrets to every person that you meet. I don't think that's necessarily the description of being trustworthy.
Right.
I kind of think of loyalty. Do you think those two is the same or not?
I don't know if they're the same, but I think they're a part of it.
Yeah, loyalty. I don't know.
Dependability maybe goes along with that. If you say you're going to do something, then do it. And
Right.
Yeah.
What about something I think that is so natural for women to fall into is just the gossiping. I mean, gossiping women is a stereotype for a reason, whether we're doing it under the guise of concern or whatever. I feel like I have a really big antenna for gossip. I don't like to be involved in it, and I definitely if people are gossiping about something to me, then I assume they're gossiping about me to someone else, and I trust them less.
Yes. Yes. That's not, yeah. That's a huge red flag. Like warning bells are going off. And like, if somebody's being talked about, and I just think, like, I thought you guys were friends.
Yeah.
I thought we were friends. So I'm really questioning this whole thing.
Right. And there's a fine line between, like, we're all going to share things about people we might know in common, but I think we know when we're gossiping. Like, we know when we're just flat out crossing a line. I don't know. I just feel like I really try not to do that, and I'm very aware if other people are doing it. So that's what I kind of went to first when she talked about about not being able to have a relationship without trust. It's interesting that you guys may have gone to some other types, but they all fall under the umbrella of trustworthiness.
Yeah.
Right.
So interesting. How would you guys rate yourself on your trustability or your trustworthiness? Because we're supposed to look at ourselves. Like, do we feel like we have improvement in this area? Do we feel like we,
I guess I kind of went to a different thing, more like keeping your word, keeping your promises. That was important to me. So maybe whatever you expect of others is what is important for you to display. Like the premier, the premier quality. Kind of like the love languages, like what you hope to get from other people is the way you show trust or you show. Yeah.
Right. I agree. I think it's something that, I don't know. I try to be this. I long to be, a good friend in this way. And you always hear trust takes time. And so I immediately started thinking about all of the kind of the newer relationships that I've made over the past year. And I start to kind of evaluate those and where they are and where I hope that they go. So it's hard to evaluate yourself, in a way. I'd be like, wow, great job on that one. That's easy. But I think there's always situations that then the Lord brings to mind. You're like, oh yeah, I could have handled that better.
Definitely.
Right.
So.
Yeah. I think that even if we think that we might do a decent job in an area, we are only human. And there are definitely times that we fail and fall down and think, I would have totally not wanted someone to do that to me. And yet I just turned around and did it. Like, we definitely mess up. Yeah.
Yes.
For sure. And we'll get to like apologizing later under the 7 principles.
I did a lot of underlining.
All right. Well, the second principle was one we sort of touched on earlier, where we said that relationships have a sowing and reaping component. And that is an ouch type statement. We don't really like to think about that because it can instill shame and regret in us. I mean, if we are reaping something, then we can think, oh, I should have invested more in that relationship, or I really messed that up and now I'm really paying the price, or I wish I could go back and redo. Is that the kind of feeling you guys get when you hear that principle? It's like, I like that principle, but I don't know if I want to examine it too closely.
Yeah, true. You could have a lot of regret, but on the other hand, it's encouraging. Like, oh, I have control from here on out. I have not control. I have the ability to take responsibility from here on out. I can change.
Right. I think that's it. This is a good litmus test, and it's kind of an ouch quality that when you start evaluating, if you feel like you always end up being treated a certain way by all kinds of different people, at that point you have to examine, what have I been sowing? Because I seem to be reaping things I don't like, and it's happened in multiple people.
Yeah,
and I think at that point,
what's the common denominator?
You're like,
here?
wait a minute, I'm the common denominator. There's something that I am doing or not doing that is causing the same type of reaction over multiple people. And so I think I underlined a lot too. I don't know if we want to talk about these, but she actually lists like qualities and actions to grow relationships. And she has a list there. And then she also lists actions that repel good relationships. And so I thought that was actually really helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. Why don't you give us some of the qualities that stuck out to you, Mindy, the ones that help grow a relationship?
That help grow, giving appreciation, performing acts of service, being trustworthy. There, that is again. I love how she put this. She says, agree wholeheartedly, but disagree softly. Be affirming, loyal, and in a good mood. Offer compassion, kindness, patience, as well as tenderness, warmth, and mercy. And then she ends it with, do more than your share.
Yeah. I like what the person in the book, after they hear that, they think to themselves, gulp, I can't be Mother Teresa. Because this list is sounding a lot like when you read the fruits of the Spirit, it's like, okay, I already fell down on fruit number 2, and like fruit number 9's just piling on.
And then you want to finish with self-control? Dude, No, I thought of the Proverbs 31 woman. I thought of that, like the unattainable list. Yes.
Right. But these are really good reminders because I think that anyone could go through this list and find something that they could improve in. I mean, there's a lot of room for improvement for everyone in here. And it's a good reminder because so many times we, like you said, Julie, we might think it's the other person's fault. And when you read this list, you think, oh, well, am I doing these good things to the best of my ability? I better take another look.
And if you're always thinking like, well, I'm not getting this, or I'm always doing this, but they don't do this, you're always free to still believe that and act that way, but just look at the results. You're going to pay the consequences, like you can still choose to be that. But like you said, Mindy, if you start to notice this is the response I get from multiple people, then it's up to you to change that. So I like that. It's like, yes, you can be valid in your belief, like that you're not getting what you need. But if you live this way, she seems to say it's like you'll actually get the opposite. You know what I mean? Like people will be drawn to you when you appreciate them and you give them attention and you're loyal and you're patient and, so it is still benefiting you. You feel like you're giving up a lot, but you're still going to benefit. You are going to benefit.
Well, what were some of the ones that repel, Mindy? Because nobody wants to be repelling other people.
Okay, let's talk about the repelling qualities. First and foremost, dishonesty. Criticism, negativity, giving too much advice and insisting on being right drives others away. People avoid those who are irresponsible, undependable, lazy, complaining, or selfish.
Boy, these are all really ouch qualities too. I think that we can find things that we need to work on in the examples of things that grow relationships, and we can also find some things that we need to work in the things that we could do to not discourage our relationships.
Yeah. Right. And I loved the quote too, Mindy, agree wholeheartedly, but disagree softly. Like that covers a lot of that. If you could just do that, it covers a lot of those qualities on both sides.
Yes. And I think if you, the list seems overwhelming if you think about a lot of people. But if you could narrow it in your mind, like this isn't talking about every person you meet on the street that you need to give all of this to. Think about the close friends that really mean something to you that you are coming in contact with on a daily basis, because you're not going to have to give as much if, you see them once a year. So I think that this is something that you really do have to narrow in your mind. Like, this is not like a group of people. These are certain individuals, that you're thinking about.
Yeah. Well, the third one was something that many people want, but a lot of times we don't know how to put into words. She says that people want to be known and understood. And then she talks about asking world-class questions and giving world-class listening. Julie, what does she mean by those?
Well, she said to ask specific questions, like if you know of a certain situation. I think she said, like, how's it going with your mother-in-law in her new apartment? Like very specific, like it shows that you've remembered a previous conversation. It shows that you care about details. It shows lots of intentionality. And then giving world-class listening. I think she says, and she says this in a later point, but you should be talking half as much as you're listening.
Yeah, that's
50% of the time. So
that's something for people to work on, myself included. Like, we could even be aware of that in the back of our mind, maybe.
Yeah, yes. And she said they're rare skills.
Mm-hmm. I mean, we did a whole podcast on being a good listener.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but that doesn't mean that we mastered it.
I'm just saying we talked about it.
We talked.
I'll try to find that one and put our show notes. Maybe we all need a little refresher.
If we demonstrated it, Julie, nobody would have talked. It would have been an hour of dead time.
Well, that's the thing. I feel like there are some people that I talk to, or some situations where if I talked less, I don't know what would fill the silence.
Right.
Do you guys ever feel that way?
Yeah, and I do feel like there's, in a relationship, sometimes there's trade-off times where somebody needs to talk and then somebody needs to listen, and then that'll flip-flop.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah.
I always think of a balance and a scale. Like if I've had a lot of talking, then I think, okay, my scale needs to, go up, and theirs needs to go down for a while.
Yeah.
Equal.
Okay, so here's a little moment of honesty on the podcast. But with some people, I kind of know what's going to get them talking, and maybe I don't have a lot to say that day, so I just push their button and they sail away with the conversation. Do you guys do that? You know what's going to get them moving, and then you can just kind of sit back and not have to think of really what to say.
Yeah.
So I'm not alone in that.
No, I knew this one lady. She wasn't actually a friend. It was somebody that I came in contact with, but I just knew the easiest way through that situation was to ask her about her job, and I wouldn't have to say another word, and she'd be happy and I would be completely satisfied.
Yep.
I'm not even saying that like in a mean way. Like there's sometimes people in my family, I'm like, I'll just throw this hot button issue out and they'll take it from there.
That's so funny.
Because maybe I feel a lack of conversational skills at that time. I don't have a lot to say, and it's like, well, it's too awkward if we're talking about nothing. So I'll bring up this because I know this will really get it going.
I definitely notice in situations where I'm overstimulated, if I had a lot of family interaction, like big family interaction, at some point, like I'm just done talking, done listening too. So
yeah, sometimes you're in the mood to listen.
So sometimes it's easier than others to talk less than 50% of the time. But yeah, that's hard because I do like to talk. I mean, always on my report card, it was likes to talk too much. I mean, some people really genuinely like to talk. I feel like I could talk about just about anything at any time and, probably bore people to death, but I could probably find something to say on it, whether it's educated or not. I could think of something. Julie's smiling and nodding her head.
No, I just know that I do have a friend who will always apologize. I know I talk too much. You're just gonna have to tell me to shut up. But on the other hand, I've been on walks with you, Marie, where I've talked the whole time. Sometimes I just have to do that. But I kind of prefer to just, with certain people, just let them talk and just be, it's just kind of fun to listen.
All right. We have talked before about the skill of asking a great question, and that listening is actually an active thing. And so being able to ask the right questions and then the right follow-up questions, being an active listener is being an active participant in moving that conversation along someplace.
Yeah.
So there is a major skill set there.
Yeah.
I've mentioned my friend Holly Godfrey, who is an amazing question asker. And I just think, how can you learn how to ask great questions? So,
yeah. Sometimes I've been in situations where I'll remember something that people told me and I'll bring it back up to them, kind of, ask about it. And they're like, oh, I can't believe you remember that. And then I kind of feel like a stalker. Like, was it abnormal to have remembered that? Should I have forgotten about
that? At the same time, some people are so excited that you heard them and that you remembered.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had that similar situation at a doctor's appointment. And I had another doctor's appointment with the same people like a month and a half apart. But I'd remembered the nurse was getting a new car. And so I asked her how her new car was going, and she just like lit up. I mean, she was so happy that I could remember.
Mindy, and that's
she was
the
getting
kind
a new
of
car.
situation. Did you sort of feel like a stalker that she was like, well, how does this woman even, what she was paying way too close to attention to me?
Isn't that weird that we feel that way? Like, because I have a friend who was telling me about a friend of hers that I don't know. And I wanted to follow up and ask about her. And I was going to call her name. And I thought, oh, well, should I even know her name? Like,
like you try to play a little dumb.
Yeah. So I was just going to say, your friend from whatever. And I was like, no, I know her name. Why would I not use it?
I know it's sometimes we feel self-conscious about being that interested in the conversation, like, because you're giving more of yourself by showing that you were so interested that you would remember.
Right. So, there's a fine line
between creepy between stalker, creepy, and Oh, that's amazing. You remembered that.
Is your life so boring that you can remember that I'm getting a new car? That's how I feel
I think that's a teenager influence in our lives.
Oh, you know what? I bet it is.
Could be
a young person influence. Like you're not supposed to be that involved.
True. Right. I bet that is true. Good thinking, Julie. Okay.
It's not our fault.
All right. Well, here's another principle. Initiate for the other person's benefit. Study to improve another's welfare. And so she says to think about, in relationships, do you think about what others would like, or do you give what you want?
Okay, I thought this was one of the most revolutionary principles in the list.
Okay.
Not because it's very obvious, like that's a no-brainer, but the importance and the power of it in a friendship, I thought was pretty amazing, because how often do we study our friends to know what they want? And I don't mean like in gifts or even service, but like, just what they want to hear even, and I don't mean that in a fake way, but I mean, just what would help them achieve their goal and their happiness. Often, like that was amazing to me. That was, like you said, Mindy, this is not just a mysterious thing. There are actually things we can think about and actually do to make relationships better. And this was a really powerful one.
I immediately, when I read this, there was another quote that I underlined. It says, "Love is a decision to act in the best interest of another." And I love that she equated this to the word love, because to set yourself aside, to put somebody in front of you is truly an act of love. And I immediately thought of a verse that I memorized years and years ago that I'll go ahead and read. It's Ephesians 4:29. "Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen." And I remember learning that verse because I wanted the words that I spoke to be what somebody else needed to hear, not what I felt like I needed to say. And so to me, this was in the same regard. It's setting yourself aside, and maybe even the things that you want to talk about or the things you want to do. This could be anything. It's just an act of setting yourself aside and putting that other person in front of you and trying to meet whatever it is that you feel like they need.
Yeah, I like how she said deciding to help people get what they want. And that word decide is crucial, because it's you have to choose to do it, because it's not going to necessarily be something you're interested in or that you care about personally.
Right.
Yeah, or it could be that you choose not to talk about something because you know that will make that other person feel bad or sad, or like sometimes we can, and not like you're cutting that person out of that part of their life, but maybe you just don't bring that topic up, or you don't stay on that topic very long, or you're just sensitive to like what keeps the conversation going in a happy way and what kind of brings it to an end. I don't know.
Right.
So it could be things that you decide to talk about or things that you let other people talk about.
That's a good point.
Right.
Well, as we said before, we all fall down. We all fail in this. And so her fifth principle is know how to react when another person disappoints you. So we're going to disappoint other people and other people are going to disappoint us. The thing is we always think that we disappoint people much less often than they disappoint us. That's our human tendency.
Yeah, I think it's like comparison of any kind. We exaggerate the way they disappoint us and diminish the way we've disappointed them. You know, it always seems out of balance in our minds.
Yeah. So how did you guys feel when you read this? She had some good ways. How should we react when somebody disappoints us?
Well, she says that we need to remember that we're all made up of strengths and weaknesses.
Right.
And so we better have a system to deal with people that let us down, because it's going to happen. I mean, even our spouses, you know, I mean, she said if we're breathing, we're going to disappoint and offend other people.
Right.
And I think going back to the things we've learned in other lessons, you know, choosing our own interpretation of those things, like we could awfulize their behavior and their actions, or we could overlook those things.
Right.
It's a choice.
She brought up the smoke analogy, the being smoke and not letting that offense, you know, hit you and embed itself and take over. And I also I appreciate that she also said you need to have a system in place already in anticipation of both you letting somebody else down and also other people letting you down. And so that's just the crux of all human relationships. And so I think that this also goes back to loving others well, is that you allow yourself to be offended. You know, there's certain relationships where I'm okay being offended by that person. You know, I know they love me. I know they didn't mean it. I know it came out wrong. I know they're tired. You know, I know whatever. And it's easier to handle the offense of some people, you know, but some people, other people, my system falls short of being smoke. You know, like if you continue to let those offenses add up, then you become bitter. And she says nothing is worse for the human heart than bitterness. So refuse to keep any bitterness toward anyone. Forgive extravagantly. And I was like, oh my goodness. You know, again, that's easier for some people in my life than it is for others.
Yeah, I think what you're kind of saying is you make allowances and give grace to some people, and then other people do the exact same thing, but you're like, no,
I don't think so. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a hard one. I mean, I think we all can think of examples of that in our own life. And kind of just that kind of just leads right into her sixth principle, which was drop the expectation that others will love and give to you in the way you prefer.
I was actually talking to Julie on the phone one day, and we were talking about this topic, and she said, you know, so often if we feel like we're giving and giving and giving, and maybe we're not getting that in return, like at the same proportion, that we start to kind of think, well, what about my needs? Are my needs going to ever be met? Or am I going to be forgotten? If I just give and give and give, then they'll just forget about my needs. And she said, shifting your thinking to only thinking about like what you're going to do to love them, what you're going to do to meet their needs, really has the total opposite effect of what you think. You are going to draw people to yourself. They're going to want to be around you and to return that love. And because she said, otherwise the other choice is self-pity, and nobody wants to be around that. And she said, you know, it just really does have the opposite effect. You want to be around somebody that is likable and pleasant.
Right.
And when we're constantly reminding them of how they let us down, or, you know, how we've been shortchanged or whatever, that's going to get old. And I think that, she goes on to say we have to get rid of those expectations that others will treat us special, that they'll be grateful and appreciative. And I think, gosh, that's a hard pill to swallow. And that's kind of not what the culture says. It's love yourself, take care of yourself first, meet your own need, make sure your needs are met first. Cut people loose if they don't serve you, And I don't think that's going to end well. I do think her advice, again, it seems self-sacrificing, but in the end, I don't think it really is what she's saying,
Yeah.
I keep thinking of all these verses that I have made myself memorize in the past about words, because our words are really how people know what's on the inside. And at some point, whatever's on the inside will come out. And so all of the verses, especially in Proverbs, about your tongue and, everything. It's just, I've done a word study on it before, and it's overwhelming and completely humbling. But just a simple, a gentle answer turns away wrath. That was another verse. Very simple that, Julie, you were talking about sometimes going that extra mile or, taking the offense, but also just being kind in a situation where even somebody isn't necessarily kind, and how sometimes that can defute an entire situation, something that was about to brim up and boil over. If you have a gentle answer, I've noticed where it just completely takes all of the air, it's there's no more combustion about to happen. And so I've noticed that with my husband, I've noticed that with my family, with my children, that if you can smooth out for a minute and have a gentle answer, the Bible has so much wisdom for us. Well,
in the study guide, she took a huge section of the study guide in this chapter to talk about the verse in Proverbs that says death and life are in the power of the tongue. And she just talked about, especially when people are disappointing us, that's when we tend to utter the death words, not the life-giving words. And that when people are disappointing us, that's often when they need the most love, encouragement, compassion, kindness. But that's not when we want to give it,
Ooh.
All right, well, let's take a look at Principle 7. The last of the 7 principles is to develop humility. Oh, I hate having to develop humility. Oh,
that sounds painful.
I know. Listen to her takeaways here. It was cheerfully take constructive criticism.
Rude.
That's so fun. Be
cheerfully.
Smoke. Try to learn from others' accusations. Like there's a hair of truth in most criticism. Like nobody does that easily. I don't really know anybody that.
Right.
I don't know. Some people do it more gracefully than others, but that is not a hard thing. That is a hard thing to do.
Yeah.
She did say this is probably the hardest task.
Okay. Well, she shouldn't have put it at the end, because I would have already given up on the list by then.
Listen, that's just like the fruits of the Holy Spirit. Self-control's at the end. You're like, whoa.
Well, I think the last one just sums up, if you could do that one, then you could do them all.
Well, that's true. That's true, Julie. You're so wise.
Way to go being logical, Julie. Oh my gosh.
I love the other thing she said. Great leaders take the blame and give the credit. And she said immature people always take the credit and give the blame.
Yes. We had a rule in our house that we had from the time the kids were little, and it was just a simple give up your right to be right. Like, stop arguing your point. Stop trying to prove your point, because you're just wrong. When you try to do that, like, you're just wrong. So that, in a nutshell, that's kind of how the Silmans tried to operate.
Well, speaking of when we're wrong, she reminds us that the 5 most powerful and important words to say in a relationship are, I was wrong, I'm sorry. And so how good are you at asking for forgiveness? And how good are you at saying you were wrong? Can we say we're better on some days than others?
Well, I will say, if I have a lack of peace and this person is on my mind, that God is saying, you need to seek forgiveness. You did this wrong. In this situation, plays over and over in my mind of what I said or what I did, I will not have rest until I go to that. I want to run to the person and beg for forgiveness so that I can have peace again in my life. So in that sense, I'm like, yes, but I will tell you, I have a situation right now, and there's a person in my mind right now that I have needed to ask forgiveness for over 2 months. And I do not have rest about this because the Lord has not provided the right opportunity. And so I am praying actively about it. This person probably has no clue, but I am praying actively about the right opportunity to seek forgiveness, and it's not been provided yet.
Okay.
So I am not at peace with this.
You want to get it off your chest.
I'd love to run over there right now.
Well, let me ask you this. Is it easier for you to say, I'm sorry, without adding the I was wrong? Do you always say both?
I mean, I don't know if I always say those exact words.
I just feel like the I'm wrong is the extra, like, I think it shows the more sincere thought behind it. 'Cause I think I'm sorry can also be interpreted as I'm sorry you're upset, or I'm sorry if you think I've upset you. Yeah, like, but that's not an apology, you know. Like, I was wrong, and I don't know. That's something we tried to teach our kids was I was wrong. Will you forgive me? That sorry could be sorry you got caught, or sorry you're having to do this. Like,
yeah, I think for me that comes in with the subtleties of listening to the tone of I'm sorry, because you can say I'm sorry and it's very clear that you knew you were wrong, or you can say I'm sorry and it's very clear you're just parroting words to get past the situation, or you can say I'm sorry where you're like, I'm sorry, but you're freaking out over nothing, but hey, I guess I'll say I'm sorry. Like, there's so many ways to say I'm sorry.
Right. It's true. It's true.
And when somebody says it sincerely, I thought about this, like how powerful those words are, because she said that those were the 5 most powerful words. You can have all kinds of stuff built up in your head, like your argument, your anger, what you want to say. And if you get those words, it's like, poof, they're gone. All that stuff can just fall apart, fall away.
Right.
Yeah. Well, it says, how good are you at saying sorry? And I think that some of my ability to say I'm sorry goes back to principle number 3. People want to be known and understood. I want to say I'm sorry. I also want the other person to know why I didn't do it on purpose, or how we got to this point.
Right.
Don't you think sometimes that could add other hurts, though? Like, sometimes it could bring up other things.
And there's so many different situations like running through my mind, but like, literally, if Bryce is apologizing for something, you know, then I'm like, well, you need, you know, but did you know that you did this wrong too? Like, you need to apologize for that too. You know, like, or if he's saying, I'm sorry, you know, I did this, but I was thinking this, and I was doing, like, you know, he's got all these, in my mind, excuses. And I'm like, you hurt me. Like, I don't need to hear your excuses.
The thing is I don't mind hearing the excuses after the sincere apology.
Oh, yeah, the sincere apology.
You know, it's like, I don't mind talking about excuses, because I know there's a myriad of ways that people get to the point of an argument.
That's true.
But I never like it if it's, I'm sorry, but it was because
you can't
of
say
this.
But.
You know what I'm saying? Or
that's why she says, I'm sorry, I was wrong. Not, I'm sorry, but.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think that a lot of forgiveness and apologies could happen better if people, maybe sometimes someone's too quick to apologize. Like, I feel like maybe they don't even know what they're apologizing for. Like, I think being known and understood has to be a part of the package.
Well, that's an ongoing relationship right there.
Yeah, because if it's too quick, it seems like they're just trying to get past the consequences or the bad feelings. Like, they're just smoothing something over and not really, like you said, understanding why it happened.
Right. Being understood, like, that's a close relationship. You need to continue to have a conversation anyway, so you have a right relationship with that family member. But here in the book, Darby has an unhealthy relationship with her mom. So there's another aspect of this that the genie, the voice of wisdom, tells her to develop humility, but also to set boundaries.
Well, I did think it was interesting, and I couldn't find where it said this. I didn't know if it was just in the study guide, but she said, from Scripture, we're told to go the second mile.
Mm-hmm.
But then she interjects, you're not necessarily required to go the third. Like, that's where the boundary comes in. It's like if someone's repeatedly, genuinely hurting you, not listening to your, what you need from them, or are, I don't know, legitimately like a toxic kind of relationship, that you do need some boundaries to kind of separate and to make it manageable. Because if they're a family member, she said, you don't want to be estranged. You could do that with a casual friend. But if it's family, that should never be the solution, is to just, I'm not talking to you. So you do have to kind of set up some, you don't have to keep putting yourself in that situation over and over and over again.
Right.
Because she said going the second mile will often diffuse it, and you won't, and it could solve it. It could soften somebody. So the second mile might be the solution, but if not, that's when you might need to set up boundaries.
In families, we have all probably noticed some generational things that we don't want to repeat. And I really appreciated reading this particular part of continuing that relationship, but also setting boundaries in a familial relationship. And so one of the last things that I underlined that I just want to say is you can break a previously unhealthy generational cycle. That was important to me to read because there are things that I see in my own family and the generations that I don't want to repeat. And I remember my mom saying, help me not repeat this, And so I just think it's good to take a look at some of those things that you have seen through your family throughout time and know that it can change.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And in midlife, I think that we can become sensitive to things that our kids might say, well, I'm going to do that differently. Like, of course, they say that when they're real little and, when they're mad at you or whatever. But I think just giving people the freedom to do something differently and maybe try not to take offense at that, because I think that could also, cause some problems depending on relationships. What do you guys think about that?
There is a middle episode that references this.
Oh, okay.
And it's one of the Mother's Day episodes, ironically. And Frankie has the great idea that she's going to ask each of her children if they would do anything different when they become a parent. And all three of her kids have advice or they have comments about how they're going to do. You're a great mom, but I probably would do this different. And man, Frankie is so hurt. And so she goes to her mom, and then she ends up telling her mom how she did it different because she didn't feel like her mom supported her dreams. And oh my goodness, like you can see the generational thing happening. You can see the hurt feelings happening. You could see how the pendulum had swung, how different, generations had done it different, because even Frankie's mom said, well, I did that because my mom and dad did this. So it's such a...
In midlife, we are more reflective on that because we're right in the middle. We still have our parents, and then we have adult children living out, making their choices. And you kind of feel like the bridge. So you feel some responsibility, or it is easy to get hurt sometimes if you think they didn't like the way you did something. But we all have that feeling about people in our past too, so that's okay. That's
right.
That's just the way it is.
Right. I guess it would just go back to the be known and understood. I just want them to understand why I did it. It wasn't because I was trying to do something wrong. I guess, we want them to understand, like, well, we did it because this is how we were taught, and our parents did it because they had this experience. And I always feel like if everybody can understand everybody else's experiences, we can have so much grace for each other.
We could just all get along.
That's where I fall down. I feel like, if we just knew more.
Yeah, that's right. If you just had more words.
Right. If we just said more about it.
So you're going to have to talk 50% of the time. You're going to have to use bigger words and get it. Use less words, get more information packed in there.
I know.
I just want to say, does all of this make any of you tired? Because I'm the kind of person who hears this and I want to be better at it. And I feel like I have to implement it all at once. Like I even made a list of friends and tried to think, how could they be seen and known? What could I do to be kind and considerate and attentive? And I just got exhausted because I think, well, first of all, you start with your husband. If you're married, that's a huge responsibility. Then you have adult children. Then you have a friend or two. Like you just wish friendships could be just organic and natural and flowing, but they take a lot of work. So this is a little bit exhausting to me.
Yeah.
To think about how much work a friendship is, I mean, it's worth it, but it's a lot more work than I think people want to realize.
Yeah. It takes intentional attention.
Yeah. And I think that we think in our friendships, unlike our familiar relationships, that we're not going to have those little resentments or those times we have to ask forgiveness, or like we almost in our minds think, oh, we got to a bump in the road and I guess we're not friends anymore. When really we should probably expect maybe to work through those. That just deepens your friendship if you work through it the right way.
Right. It's true.
And I think you said this at the beginning, Marie, maybe for people like me, take one aspect of one principle to work on. Like can't work on all 7 on all your friends at once.
Right.
Because that's my tendency is like, I need to be doing more.
Actually, you can, according to a quote by you early in the episode, Julie, if you just do number 7, that encompasses them all.
Develop humility.
See how I remember those little things about you?
Creepy, Marie, creepy. But I think about like gifts and service, like those kind of things are what stand out to me is that I need to be doing more of it. It's like, oh, it sounds tiring.
Right.
Well, Julie, I have thought about you multiple times over this past week, and I wanted to reach out to you and ask you like how you're finding your genius zone is going. And I thought about that with this, like how we should help our friends with their interests. And I'm like, I wonder if she can help me find my genius zone. Maybe I can help her find her genius zone.
Well, yeah, we probably
that was a thought. I haven't done anything with it, but I did.
Okay.
Now at least I told you about it.
Well, listeners, if you're feeling tired and like you have a lot to work to do after this episode, know you're not alone. And also know that we definitely do not bring this book to you or this episode to you trying to give you a bunch of work. Like everybody's struggling in their relationships. And if we get one win on one principle this week, let's cheer each other on.
Yes.
So if you're reading along with us and you have anything that you want to say about this chapter, come and find us on Instagram at Midlife Matters Podcast or email us at midlifematterspodcast@gmail.com. I actually got an Instagram message just yesterday from someone that's been reading along with us, and they wanted me to give them the episode numbers of all the different chapters that we have discussed. So there are people out there reading the book, and they're really enjoying it.
Excellent.
That would be good to go back and listen to them in order, consecutively. That would be a good thing for even us to do.
Yeah,
I know my daughter mentioned these have been some of her favorite episodes that we have recorded. And she said, and there's some that I feel like I need to take a couple days and listen to the same one again. Like there's so much included. But Julie Gordon, the author, is just a wise woman that we are all trying to learn some principles about how to live better, be happier.
Right. All right, you guys. Well, before we go, let's do I'm a Fan. And Julie, what are you a fan of this week?
Well, I'm a fan of another movie.
Okay.
You can tell I'm watching lots of television.
Yeah.
It's a movie called Operation Mincemeat, and it's based on a book I read several years ago and thought at that time, I can't believe somebody hasn't made a movie about this. And so in 2021, it came out and it stars Colin Firth. So that's a good thing in my book. It's a war drama and it's a true story. And it's about this idea that altered the whole course of the war. And it's, not a lot of people know about it. That's the kind of stories I like some small.
I've never heard of this operation.
Yeah, the operation used the dead body of this vagrant that they found. I think he had committed suicide, and they gave him a false identity as a major in the British Air Force. And they gave him a detailed backstory, even a love interest, a girlfriend. That gave him photo IDs. And then they even they call it litter in their pockets. Like he had some false information that they wanted the Germans to find in his pockets. So it was supposed to look like he was shot down and his body washed up on the shore and the Germans found it. And it was really interesting.
Now, where did you watch that, Julie?
I think it's Netflix.
Okay. And it's called Operation Mincemeat. Interesting. I think I would definitely enjoy that.
Yeah, it's a good drama. It's not like a thriller, I mean, it's just a good drama. Yeah.
Okay, good. Very good. Mindy, what are you a fan of this week?
I'm a fan of a little cheap makeup item that I've started incorporating on a daily basis. We all know that as we age, our eyebrows get thinner, lighter, barely existent. And that one way to a younger looking face is to have eyebrows.
Okay.
We don't want to have creepy eyebrows. All right. So
I can't wait to hear what this product is.
I'm setting this up so well.
You want 2 eyebrows, not 1.
That's right. All right. So many eyebrow jokes. Okay. I'm moving on, showing some self-control because I've got a lot going on in my head. Abby was here the other weekend and she had gotten the wrong color of this and she had my color. So she gave it to me and I tried it and I was like, oh my gosh, I love this. It's by the brand e.l.f., which automatically means it's cheap, which is great. And it's called Wow Brow Gel. And at Walmart, it's $4. At Target, it's $5. And basically it's a tinted brow gel. And so you just, it's this it's like this big. It's like 2 inches long, maybe. So in your makeup bag, it's not taking up much real estate and it's just a tinted brow gel. So, but I didn't feel like it was overly I don't feel like it's too dark.
Yes. I'm looking at your eyebrows now, studying them, Mindy, and they look very natural.
I was thrilled because I do like to kind of naturally draw my eyebrows in because it does help my face. But this was nice because then the older we get, also you get weird hairs that stick out sometimes. And so the gel part of it kind of puts them in place.
Is it like a mascara wand?
Yeah, it's tiny, like a teeny tiny one.
Yeah.
So I was really impressed. And I thought that e.l.f. had great color choices, for different, color of eyebrows.
Oh, what color did you get? Because you're similar in color to mine. So,
okay. I think mine is neutral brown.
Okay.
So there's a darker brown one, but I think this is a neutral brown. And then there's one that's even lighter that Abby uses because her hair is actually lighter than mine.
Okay. That's awesome. I'm definitely going to check that out for sure. All right. Well, this week I'm a fan of a book, and I've talked before about the author Sally Hepworth, and I really enjoyed her book called The Mother-in-Law. And this is another book by her. It's called The Family Next Door. One of the little teaser lines is, small, perfect towns often hold the deepest secrets. And it's basically about several families on a cul-de-sac, and it's kind of a mystery drama. But the ending of the description says, the family next door is Sally Hepworth at her very best. At once a deeply moving portrait of family drama and a compelling suburban mystery that will keep you hooked until the very last page. And these are just the kind of books that I like. Dramatic and mysterious. So if you enjoyed any of her books before, including The Mother-in-Law, which I did recommend probably 2 years ago, this is also really good. The Family Next Door by Sally Hepworth. And I texted a friend who we share similar tastes, and I said, oh, I loved The Family Next Door. She goes, oh, I gave it 5 stars on Goodreads, so I must have enjoyed it too.
Oh my goodness. And isn't this The Mother-in-Law? Is that the one you were telling us that learning why the mother-in-law did what she did helped okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I love learning the whys.
Be known and understood.
Yes.
I like that.
Well, I love talking about this with you guys. And if you get a win on any of these principles this week, be sure and text it out so we can cheer you on.
Definitely want to hear about it.
Yeah. All right. We'll talk to you guys next week.
All right.
Sounds
Goodbye.
great.
All right, bye. We're so happy you joined us today. You can find the show notes for this episode at midlifematterspodcast.com. Also, please tell a friend about the show and help them hit the free subscribe button on their favorite podcast app. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at Midlife Matters Podcast. That's where we post pictures and stories about all the things we talk about in each episode. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.